Welcome back. All right, so how about a video on the Montreal Canadiens? I talked about three rebuilds in the Atlantic, which shows there's a lot of rebuilds going on. Detroit, who appear to be coming out of theirs, and they look like a playoff team. Buffalo, who are working on coming out of theirs, and it's still a work in progress. And Ottawa. Ottawa, kind of showing that, again, that process of rebuilding your team is very difficult. The process of making your team a playoff team is not easy. So that's where we're at right now. And in a league where 16 out of 32 teams make it, yeah, the difficulty of making the playoffs is real. So right now, Montreal's 19, 20, and 7 overall. They're 8 points behind the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the odds of them making the playoffs are remote, which is okay because, again, they're still in the rebuild. Last year at this time, they were 19, 24, and 3. So similar in that the only difference being they got 4 points in extra time that they didn't have this at this point last year. The previous year was a nightmare, of course. 8, 31, and 7. So they come out of that 2021 Stanley Cup final, lose Shea Weber, lose Carey Price, and seemingly their identity as well. The team just completely falls apart. So the way they've handled it since then, I think, has been the right way to deal with it. And I wanted to talk about four core players going forward. You've got Nick Suzuki, 46 games, 12 goals, 26 assists, 38 points. I do think that with Montreal, when this team is ready to be a contender and get back into the playoffs and when they're dangerous, Suzuki probably ends up on the second line. That's my guessing. Caulfield, 46 games, 16 goals, 19 assists, 35 points. Caulfield started scoring the way that we know that he can. Caulfield is I would say, 30 to 40 goal scorer who has an outside chance of at some point producing 50 goals in a season, but 30 to 40 goals isn't shabby either. So yeah, Caulfield, good player, and again, one of that top six when they come out of this rebuild in all likelihood, yes. Matheson's having a career year. He has 7 goals, 25 assists for 32 points in 46 games. He's playing in situations for Montreal he wouldn't be elsewhere. So I don't know how much that improves his trade stock if they decided to make a move there, because they have a very deep blue line from a point of view of there's a lot of guys there who could be very good top four defensemen at some point soon. So in the event that they decide that Matheson's going to have the most value this year that he's ever going to have, maybe they put him on the market and just see what the interest is going to look like. And then Uri Slavkovsky, who has started to realize his potential, 6 goals, 12 assists, 18 points, isn't a head turner. I'm not saying to add him to your fantasy team right now, although if you need somebody who might low key be a pretty good pickup, Slavkovsky's playing top line minutes right now, and he has not looked out of place there. So Montreal has hope for the future with the three forwards, and they have a piece in Matheson that they might be able to make a move with either around the trade deadline or maybe in the summer. But we'll see. They have options. Now, the young defense is what I get excited about with Montreal's roster. So you have Justin Barron, 41 games, 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points. He's 22 years of age. A lot of potential there. Now, not all of these defensemen are going to end up being really good top four defensemen, but it feels like they've added so many good young defensemen that somebody's going to hit. Caden Gooley, 42 games, 3 goals, 8 assists, 11 points. He's 22 years of age as well. Gooley, I don't think he ends up going anywhere at any point anytime soon. I would not be surprised to see him sign a pretty decent long-term extension with Montreal when that day comes. Jordan Harris, 29 games, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points. He's 23 years of age. I like Harris's work ethic. Jaden Struble has turned a lot of heads since being called up. 28 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. He's 22 years of age. And I agree with the excitement. I think that the 4 points doesn't tell you just how dynamic he's been at points out there. And we'll see what Struble's able to do. And then Arbor Jacki. How can you not like Arbor Jacki? 17 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. 22 years of age as well. And hits, he can do the hits. He gives you a lot of energy. There's a lot of good young defensemen here. And I would say that of the 5, maybe 3 of them are still there when this team's ready to contend at some point in time. Maybe you move 1 or you move 2, or just something changes and you end up making some kind of a change on the blue line there. Now, they're pending UFAs, Sean Monahan, and there's a lot of discussion about Monahan likely leaving at the deadline, which that's very likely going to happen. I'd be quite surprised if he was still a Hab after the deadline because he is a pending unrestricted free agent. Mitchell Stevens, depth player. You can probably get back a draft pick for him at the deadline. Tanner Pearson's going to be an interesting one to watch. It feels like the way he was playing at the start of the year was going to improve his stock, and then he got hurt. And so as long as he's hurt, that's not going to help his stock at the trade deadline. But somebody looking for a 20 goal scorer, like I could see, for instance, I don't know, Pittsburgh, LA, a team that he's played for before, saying we know what we would be getting with Pearson and making a move to bring him back. That kind of thing, just as a throwing it out there. So the one thing to keep in mind with Montreal is cap space. Cap space being gold, right? So the cap space that they're going to have on July the 1st, according to Cap Friendly, $7,258,750. But they may look to create more space. Carey Price, it's a $10.5 million cap hit until 2026. We know he's not going to play again, and I am aware that can go on LTIR, but LTIR isn't just like a complete and total get out of jail free card. It is still a hassle for GMs to have that there. That's why you see teams moving those contracts for players who are never going to play again. Would I be surprised if Montreal tried to find a taker for Carey Price's contract just for that cap hit? This summer would honestly surprise me because it doesn't feel like the 2024-2025 seasons where things are going to get interesting. But on the last year of that deal, 2025-2026, maybe. Maybe next year we see Montreal get a little better, and maybe the thinking could be, hey, the salary cap's going through the roof. We could have all kinds of cap space. If we can move Carey Price's contract, that'd be even better. So we'll see if something changes there. One thing I wanted to mention too is Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach, of course, injured, which is something that we've seen all too often with Kirby Dach. If Kirby Dach can come in and play well, play to the best of his ability, Kirby Dach is a core forward for this team, a top 6 player that right now I would totally understand people overlooking and saying, I forgot about Dach. Kirby Dach, too, at the time he got hurt, it looked like he was going to have a nice bounce back. So Kirby Dach still has the ability. He has all the skill in the world. It's just a matter of staying healthy. And one thing to keep in mind, of course, talking about the young defense, I have to make sure that I mention the number 5 draft pick this year was David Reinbacher. And while there's all the debate about whether or not they should have drafted somebody else, and of course that speculation is always going to be there when it comes to NHL drafts, Reinbacher definitely projects as a solid top 4 or top 2 defenseman. So there's a lot of good young defensemen there. You have Logan Mailloux as well in Laval. The question being how good he's actually going to be and whether or not he's going to be an NHL defenseman. It depends on which scouting report you read. So one thing that I wanted to talk about too, as we get closer to the deadline, Kent Hughes has shown no shyness when it comes to being able to make a really good trade. And they've been parts of 3-way deals, a few of them. And they usually add a draft pick in that. Sometimes you're looking to add some salary flexibility in there too. So I would be very surprised if we don't see Montreal very active at the deadline and getting creative. I'm kind of anxious to see what they're able to do, what they're able to get for Monahan, what they might be able to get for Stevens, Pearson, or anybody else they look to move, including Jake Allen. Jake Allen very likely to get dealt. I think if he's not dealt, Montreal fans would see that as a loss because you have 3 goaltenders. You know you're not going to carry 3 goaltenders all year. Montembeault has been excellent. He's their starter. He's already signed the extension past next season. And, of course, Primo is 24 years of age. He's as ready now as he's going to be. So that means Jake Allen is your extra goaltender, which we've kind of known the whole season anyways. But once we get around trade deadline, I think the market for Allen's going to be pretty good, especially if, as rumors have had it, the goalie market is expensive. If Montreal is willing to maybe take back a little bit less than what other teams are asking for maybe a higher profile goaltender, they might be able to get him dealt and get back some pretty decent assets in the return. Brendan Gallagher, one player that we talk about every year, and I'm sure this will come up too with Brendan Gallagher as we reach the off season in the summer. He has a $6.5 million cap hit through 2027. Again, as this team's looking better, so maybe not next year, but the year after, that might be when you're saying, we want to move Gallagher's contract, unless at that point the salary cap's high enough that contract's no longer seen as hurting them. The one thing that I notice with Montreal when I look at this team from top to bottom, they don't really have that explosive star forward. So I think that's the one thing that they need. They need that explosive star forward. Most Canadian teams have at least one, and Montreal definitely, I think, is in need of one. And the nice thing is they can go two routes with this, really. You can either continue with the rebuild and draft, or you can make some cap space with all these young players you have, and you're cobbling together not a bad roster. Again, you're 8 points out of the playoffs without really making that attempt to push for the playoffs. So maybe you could pick up a UFA in 2025. Maybe you can be a team that's willing to spend a little bit more to attract somebody and get that explosive forward as an unrestricted free agent. Montreal is a team that makes a lot of money. Jeff Molson worth some cash, and Montreal, I don't think they will be shy with the money once they're ready to make this team better and get back into the hunt. So kind of a sleeping giant as it is, I guess. But I think they need that explosive young forward. They are just in year 3 of a rebuild. One thing that I've wanted to do a video on, and this is more of a in the summer kind of thing, is look at rebuilds of the past, which don't feel like they took as long as the rebuilds we're seeing now. But at the same time, there's more teams now. I think it's more difficult to move up the standings now than it might have been 20 years ago. So rebuilds, I think, are going to tend to take a little bit longer. But Montreal's on the right track. I like the pieces they've got right now. I think this is a good mix, and I think they got the right coach. I think Marty St. Louis should be given a chance to coach this team right through until they're ready to contend. Talking about, making sure players are having fun out there and they've got the right attitude. And the first thing he did was just simplify the whole thing and not worry as much about the systems and just, hey, go out there and have fun. And it worked. And at this stage, there's definitely more structure to their game now than there was when Marty St. Louis took over. But the fun part of it, he definitely does stress, and it's definitely important that these young players are enjoying themselves out there. Because if they're not, they're going to be a little bit more tense, maybe a little more nervous, and next thing you know, you're losing a game that maybe you could have won. Josh Anderson's another one I wanted to throw in here too. Josh Anderson has a $5.5 million cap hit through 2027. A really slow start to the season offensively. It's been better lately. We'll see whether or not he's with the team too. The fact that Gallagher and Anderson cost them $12 million in cap through to 2027. Again, it's not a problem now. This is not a team with cap problem now. But once they're ready to contend, those two contracts might be ones that they want to move from. Before the break, so for anybody who might be like, hey, could they maybe go on a bit of a run before the break and make this video go out of date really quickly? Tomorrow, they're at home against Ottawa. So that is a winnable game, although Ottawa seems to be figuring themselves out right now. Then Thursday, they're home against the Islanders. So Patrick Roy is going to be in Montreal, and that's going to be awesome. I'm really enjoying that idea. And then on Saturday, they're in Pittsburgh. So those 3 games, are they winnable? Yeah. Those teams are all below the playoff line. So those are definitely games that are winnable. But for Montreal right now, it isn't as much about the winning. I feel like it's about the big picture. It's one of the reasons why I don't talk a lot about Montreal. I don't dump on Montreal either when I talk about teams that are struggling while they're struggling, because it's understandable and they're still in the rebuild. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. I really like this sweater. I got this from Tricolor Sports. It looks like the globe was a different shape at the time that this was made. But anyways, the first thing I looked at was that doesn't quite look like North America, but I get it. I will say that I think it was great that when Montreal won the Stanley Cup, for 1 year they wore this, and that was their world champions. And I think there were 4 teams in the league or 5 teams in the league. But hey, you know what? I like the confidence, and so I wanted to wear that for this video as well. But let me know your thoughts. When do you expect Montreal to actually contend for the playoffs and make that push? Again, to me, I think 2026 is probably where we can look at them trying to push their way into the playoffs. I think one more year after this where they probably get better, maybe not quite a playoff team yet. But yeah, it should be fun to watch. Let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.